All right. Well, hello, everybody. We are live with another episode of Simply Finance with Shane White. I am pumped today to have Manny Lubin on the podcast, co-founder of Slate Milk. Manny, welcome to the show.
What's up, Shane? Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for taking the time. Do you mind giving everyone a quick intro to yourself? And then I think just giving everyone a real quick intro of just what Slate is would be fantastic, if you don't
Yeah, so
mind.
I'm Manny, co-founder of Slate Milk. And in 2017, Josh, my co-founder, and myself, we just love chocolate milk, wanted to make it better for you. So we teamed up and started investigating ways to do that. And we are 75% less sugar than other chocolate milk. We have 17 grams of protein per can, and we're just a better for you chocolate milk company.
Love it. Love it. It's so simple, but it's like I resonated with me when I first saw you guys. I forget where I did. I was like, oh, hell yeah, healthier chocolate milk. That's what I'm talking about.
Right? Who doesn't love chocolate milk, right?
Who
Like that's
doesn't
what
love chocolate milk, right?
it started with is we're already drinking it every day.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
trying to lower our sugar, increase our protein, both lactose intolerant, right? So
Okay. So this
yeah.
is something I was going to ask you right away was my wife became lactose intolerant like 2 years ago. And then
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I swear to God, 4 months ago, I started having like lactose intolerant type symptoms.
Yeah.
Is that, do you know, you might know because you're in the business, but is that something that just like randomly develops in people?
Yeah. So actually, as you go through puberty, a lot of people like they stop being able to process lactose,
Okay.
right? So the lactase enzyme is actually an enzyme in your stomach that
Yeah.
you're born with. And as you go through puberty, it like starts to slowly dissolve in
Okay.
a lot of people. So actually like 75% of the world is actually lactose intolerant. And a lot of
Really?
people don't know that.
Oh yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
not normal for you to drink. I've known that. Like it's not necessarily
Yeah.
the most normal thing to drink like full, lactose milk. But it's weird because I'm 29. And then I felt
Yeah.
like randomly this year, I don't know. Every time I have like pizza, dairy, I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and also actually for myself, Josh, actually both my brothers, one meal made us lactose intolerant.
Really?
So
Well,
so I I won't say the name of the fast food chain. Let's say it's a girl with red hair,
okay. Wouldn't
and
know that.
at a certain point, I don't know if they're still offering it, but they're offering a triple cheeseburger.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Haven't been back there since. Triple cheeseburger, large shake, large fries that I think I actually dipped in the shake. And I
Oh
woke up the
wow.
next morning. This was in eighth grade, and I was lactose intolerant. And there are a lot of people that say, you sure you're lactose intolerant? I I was sure.
Yeah,
I went to
yeah.
the
Usually
doctor.
it's a pretty obvious symptom. Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, I was sure. And I went to the doctor actually, and so I actually wrote a blog about this. I'm not a doctor. I'm far from a doctor, but to make sure I was lactose intolerant, they just gave me a bunch of lactose, and they're like, "Here, let's see what this does to you."
Seems
And
logical.
and yeah, so that's how I found out I was actually lactose intolerant.
Okay.
And other people, it's different. It depends on like you have different severities of lactose intolerance, right?
Sure.
So like I even say, like even in our pitch, we're like, I could eat a slice of cheese pizza. I'm not gonna like pop like a balloon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it won't make me feel great.
That's
And
kind of the key, I
yeah,
think. I mean, like,
definitely.
I probably don't have the extreme end, but I definitely just don't feel good after anymore.
Right. And it's funny, a lot of these posts about people that are talking about how we shouldn't drink milk, which we respect. Like people have their thoughts and their views on animal products, and we respect passion. I think is one of the things that we respect most in people and in businesses. For us, we see a lot of innovation in the non-dairy space, like the
Sure.
plant-based protein, and we felt as though there's a lot of opportunity to innovate real dairy, which is why we focus on chocolate milk, and we just again love chocolate milk. We're already always drinking it. Wanted to
Right.
make it healthier, wanted to make it lactose free for everyone, put it in a can, it's more recyclable. um, but yeah, what we realized is a lot of people that are drinking these plant-based drinks are drinking it because real milk makes them feel like garbage, and it's not the
Yes.
milk itself, it's just the lactose, right? And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily apples to apples, but you peel off the skin of a banana, right? Like we're not eating things in nature as they appear. Like we're actually making changes so that our bodies can digest them properly.
I saw you with you wrote that somewhere online I saw and I was like, that's such a great analogy.
Yeah.
I had never thought about that with milk before, but it totally makes
Right.
sense.
Right. And so it's not like I'm not like biting into a coconut, right?
Yeah.
It's like with milk, like if we could filter out these large angry sugars, because lactose again, it's just a big sugar, and the enzyme in our stomachs that we're born with actually breaks it down into smaller digestible sugars, which then can
Okay.
be absorbed into our stomachs.
Yeah.
And if you have this large sugar that your stomach can't absorb, then it's going to cause you pain. Like it can cause discomfort. It can cause obviously things that happen in the bathroom. It can cause actually like skin problems with acne and whatnot. So we just, we think the future of milk, not only better for you, which we can get into, but also most things are going to be lactose free because it's just meant for everyone. It's meant for
Got
adults.
it. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, that seems like something that someone would have figured out a long time ago, but obviously not.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I think, one of the things I always love to start with is just like, how did you come up with the idea? Like, I always love the like 0 to 1. So like, what do you remember when you and Josh first had the conversation around just, wanting to start this, or what
Oh, yeah.
that conversation looked like?
Yeah. It's funny. You call it 0 to 1. We do the same, right? And
Okay.
we,
Yeah.
we even say, gutting from 1 to 2, I think I mean, we got a long way to go, right?
Sure. Sure.
But what we thought is that will be the hardest part. And that, like, we're going to get into it, like how we finance the business. But like,
Yeah.
that's why we need to bring someone else on the team that had more experience. But before getting there, 0 to 1, it's really just about grit, right? It's just about, so when we first had the idea, I think even like a group text with like my college buddies years ago, I was like, I'm always drinking this lactose-free milk that's meant for kids. Like, why
Yeah.
isn't there a lactose-free chocolate milk that is meant for adults? Like, the idea happened years ago. I think Josh
Okay.
had a similar idea. And then when we realized there was a business opportunity was when we actually took a microscope to the market, because we don't want to try to build $1 billion business in a declining market.
Yeah.
That wasn't something that was appealing to us, and we didn't think it was feasible. And so we heard milk was dying, but I just started Googling the chocolate milk market and ready to drink protein,
Right.
and lactose free milk. And we started realizing that lactose free milk is actually on the rise, right?
Oh,
It's been up like 85% in the last 5 years. Yeah, it's growing like crazy.
and
Which people don't realize.
this is a dumb question, but actually
Oh,
something
yeah.
I've never asked on this podcast. If you're someone like you who are just like, you're looking at industries, where did you guys go to get that information? Like, how did you find out that that industry was growing? Because I think some people who are not in the food industry would have no idea, like, where the hell do I even do that?
Google. I
Okay.
literally just started
Yeah.
with Google.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the first thing we Googled was like how to start a chocolate milk company, because we're not like sons of dairy farmers, right? Like,
Right.
I didn't know anything about milk other than it tasted good, and when it was chocolate flavored, I drank it even more, right?
That is so funny. Yeah. Okay.
And then like there are a lot of services where you have to pay for this information, but if you go deep enough, like if you're on page like 13, 14 in Google, sometimes a lot of times it's not good stuff, but like you can find some stuff.
So it's just,
Uh,
again, it's the grit, the perseverance.
Yeah,
Just
it's
keep
just like
looking,
you
keep
find a
trying to
way. And then
find the
I think we
answer.
asked some people in the dairy space, but so this is going back from 0 to 1 was just we realized that the lactose-free milk market was growing, the chocolate milk market was growing, and we just realized that 4 to 5 people are trying to decrease sugar from their diets. We realized that 3 out of 5 were increasing protein, right? And so we just saw all these growing like natural products are on the rise. So like we just saw all of these trends that said, all right, the market is calling for this. And then from a brand standpoint, we just saw this huge lane that no one was taking advantage of, right? Like our guardrails, we say, are like basically like the bodybuilder protein shakes, we call them,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then the kids chocolate milks. And like in between there, if you could just strip away the packaging that exists, right, and just like focus on the liquid, chocolate milk itself is really delicious and it's a great product. Like naturally, it's got protein in it. People enjoy the taste.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And then we looked at that and we're like, well, if we can make it lower in sugar, higher in protein, lactose free, then that's just a great liquid. And then if surrounding it, we can put it in a container that made everyone feel comfortable drinking it, right? Because we talk about how chocolate milk, everything that exists is like exclusive to
Yeah.
kids, to bodybuilding,
That's
whatever.
so true. I had never thought about that. It's very true. It is like very segmented.
Exactly. And so, you look at our X bar, it was a lot of our inspiration is like just have a great product,
Yeah.
brand it simply. And so if people want it, like people are educated enough, they have access to their phones, to internet to determine whether it's a good fit for their diet. So that was kind of all right, we have something here.
Yeah. And do you remember the first batch? Actually, I think you guys posted a video of not the very first batch, but I've seen you have like that video where you guys are trying the different ones.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember like the very first batch though? Like when you
Oh
guys
yeah.
first were brewing this up in the kitchen, I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah. All right. So I actually sent a deck to Josh.
Okay.
Um,
Just like a PowerPoint
a
deck.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Just Sweet Victory drinks. You work hard, you deserve a Sweet Victory. It was like all black, like the brand. It was just not great, but it was just like I like got like a blank can off of like Google, and then just like on it wrote like
Yeah.
Sweet Victory drinks, but like spray painted in my backyard like a can. But
Love it. Love it.
Josh was like get the heck out of here. We're not starting a chocolate milk company, and we're not putting the can and like all this stuff. Like it has to be bigger than a brand, right?
Okay.
And that's when we actually started learning about ultrafiltration, which is the process of removing the natural lactose sugars from milk. There was one company at the time that was much smaller. Now it's fully owned by Coke Fairlife that was doing it.
Yes. Yep.
And we realized that you could, with ultrafiltration, make it lower in sugar, higher in protein, lactose free. So that was the moment where it's like, all right, we have something here. And then we went to Stop and Shop. We got some ultrafiltered milk and a bunch of ingredients in my kitchen. This was probably November 2017, maybe early 2018. And within 5 minutes, we're like, there's no way we were going to be able to do this ourselves. Like, we are physically incapable of creating an ultra filtered chocolate milk with ingredients that we can buy at a store.
Okay.
And so that's when we realized we had to raise our first capital, and that first capital was going to go towards creating like our MVP, like our minimal viable product, or our first version of the product.
And why? That's not to interject, but why did you know from that first batch in the kitchen that it wasn't going to be possible to do it on your own?
Because it tasted terrible.
Okay. Okay.
And the consistency was off, and something that we haven't even gotten into yet is the pasteurization process. So we knew we wanted to make it shelf stable, and to make it shelf stable, there are just other ingredients that you need, like all natural ingredients, but ingredients that give it a little bit more of a body, and that more or less allow it to blend together and go through this pasteurization process.
Okay.
And it wouldn't necessarily taste like it's going to taste just with the ingredients of the store.
Oh, got it. Interesting. And maybe that would be helpful. Can you explain so this ultrafiltration and then pasteurization, like all terms I think most of us have probably heard, but like why is it so important with your guys' product in the milk market in general? Like what does all that mean?
Ultrafiltration is the process of naturally filtering out the lactose sugars in milk. And you can do different degrees. So like you can slightly ultrafilter it, which will remove some of the sugars, or you can really, what we say, crank it up and remove as many of those sugars as you can. And it's not like we describe it as like a filter, like any other filter, but it's like bigger than this room. Like a UF machine, an ultrafiltration machine is enormous.
Oh, is it really?
It's a bunch of like tubes, and the milk's just going in and out and in and out and in and out, and it's trying to catch as many of those lactose sugars as it can.
Oh, wow.
And then it also filters out some of the natural water. So you think about milk is, call it 85 to 90% water. If you filter out some of that water, it's still liquid, but per ounce, it's actually slightly condensed or concentrated.
Oh,
so the same size container can actually have more protein. It's also premium.
Oh, got it. Oh, because so really like regular milk is essentially, if it's not ultra filtered, it's more watered down.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And the fat is actually what gives it the body, but when it comes to UF milk, ultra filtered milk, because the proteins are slightly condensed, it actually gives it kind of like that body from fats.
Oh, got it. Oh, learned something new today. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So we ultra filter our milk. We also add the lactase enzyme, because as far as we're concerned, no one on the planet can filter out 100% of the lactose sugars.
Okay.
And so we are 100% lactose free, because then there's an enzyme. So let's say, 15 sugars, not literally, it's way more, but like these sugars make it through the UF machine. We still need to break those down so that we don't have any lactose sugars in the product.
Got it.
So that enzyme that's naturally in our stomachs, that's that lactate pill you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like lactase enzyme. So the companies that are lactose-free milk that aren't ultra-filtered are just adding an enzyme to their milk. And so those large lactose sugars are breaking down to smaller sugars. It takes about 24 hours typically for the enzyme to kick in.
Okay.
And it's digestible.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I know. It's like, I'm like a milk guy now.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, you said that on another thing I saw. You guys are like milkmen. I'm like, you really are. That's exactly what you're doing. So then, I mean, obviously you're explaining all this. This all makes sense. What makes Slate milk like different than Fairlife, for example, or some of these other brands that have, they're in the milk space?
Yeah, absolutely. So then once we have our ultra filtered milk product, now we talk about pasteurizing it, right?
Okay.
And so to make a dairy product and even coffees, like to make a lot of these products shelf stable, there are two ways to do it. One is called UHT to aseptic. So think of like your Tetra Pak carton. A lot of the times, like a lot of coconut waters are in these types of containers. Or you think of a plastic bottle, like a PET plastic bottle that has coffees in it. So that uses a process called ultra heat treatment, UHT to aseptic packaging. Whereas we use the retort process. So any coffee or dairy product you see that's shelf stable in a can or in glass. So you think of, the largest coffee company in the country does this for a lot of their drinks.
Right.
they are using what's called the retort process. And the way that we describe that is it's almost like a huge submarine looking pressure cooker,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So our cans our chocolate milks are blended. The milk's pre-pasteurized. They're blended. The ingredients are batched together. They're canned, and then they go in this large, almost water oven. And we'd say they're
Whoa.
cooked like a cake.
Yeah.
So they heat up, they cool down, shelf stable for an extended period of time.
Got it. Okay. Oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool. I just like it's so funny you say you're explaining all this because it couldn't have been a month ago that I realized like why cans are shelf stable. Like my father-in-law's in the food industry too,
Yeah.
and he was explaining like chicken noodle soup how it's made, and I was
Yep.
like, it's similar, and I was
Yeah.
like, that's so crazy. I just never thought twice how when you open it, you just
Definitely.
break the air seal, and that's but before then
Exactly.
that's why it's shelf stable. That's
It's
really cool.
huge. It's huge. And so yeah, no, so we're combining the ultrafiltration process, the retort process. We're the first in the real milk space as far as we're concerned. Like it's really been made popular by the coffees, at
Okay.
least the
Yeah.
retort process. But as far as we're concerned, we're the first in the country to put chocolate milk in a can and be able to sell it online and shelf stably.
Love it. Oh, that's so cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it took 18 months from conception to have you said the first batch.
yeah.
Like that was
Well, now that makes sense because
yeah,
this is much more complicated. That you can't necessarily do all that in your kitchen.
right.
So
No, there was a period where, so we launched a Kickstarter campaign, and even
yeah,
before that, we just didn't know how the heck we're gonna get this thing in the market. Because like we had all the pieces, we had the growing market, we worked with this formulation team, we got the flavor to a good place, right? And then it was like, how do we get this stuff made?
yeah,
And so it's just knocking on doors, and if they said no, we just kept coming back because it's like
right,
there's an opportunity here,
yeah,
right? And we started getting more and more what we call just like the one domino would knock over, then it'd knock over three more dominoes, and like more and more pieces of the team would join, and the opportunities would present themselves, and we ended up launching it in November of 2019.
got it, love it. So yeah, I was gonna say when I was doing my research and trying to put a timeline together for you guys, I think this would be a great leeway for
Yeah,
my next kind of question that I think a lot of the audience is probably thinking right now. So you guys are one of the first founders I've had on here that, yeah, it sounds like you guys had the concept, like you said, you had like this path to market, like in general, but like making the product seemed like that was going to be extremely expensive. So would love to know. I was going to ask more of a like
yeah,
bootstrapping versus raising capital question. You kind of answered that already, saying
yeah,
it was very obvious early on that you guys were going to have to raise capital. But then, for the listeners who don't know, I mean, you guys, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but you were on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. You tried to go on Shark Tank to get capital. So you guys did a lot of things to try
yeah,
to raise some money. Would you explain to everyone, like,
yeah.
once you got to that point where you and Josh were like, okay, shit, we need to raise money. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
no way we can do this on our own. What was that like brainstorm process? How did you guys decide on like which avenue to go down? And if it was just knocking on doors, like you said, that's an
Yeah,
awesome answer too. But would love to just know like that part of the
definitely.
story and how it worked.
Well, I think it's important that look, to date it's public. We've raised like 2.5 million, right? And
Yeah.
so like we haven't raised a ton of money, but also I don't think there's a right path. I think even for every individual business, I don't think there's one right path. And I think
Sure. Oh yeah.
you look at the press and you see all these millions and millions of dollars raised, or you look at the companies that bootstrap themselves, like you look at the RX versus
Yeah.
like some of the other companies that raised. Like, there's no individual right path. But for us, we needed money to get to the next step. So at the beginning, we bootstrapped it, and then when we realized we needed X amount of money to get the product made, then we raised that much money with a little bit of breathing room,
Okay.
right? So we never necessarily at least up until our most recent round, like we had numbers in mind of what we needed, but we raised what we didn't like set a number like if we don't hit that, then the round is unsuccessful. It's like
Yeah.
this is what we need to get to the next place. I think that's still how we think
That's
about
smart. I mean, yeah. So it sounds like, yeah, okay. So you guys didn't just go raise money for the sake of
it.
raising
Right,
money and like, let's just raise a ton so that we're safe.
right.
You figured out what you kind of needed and backed into
Exactly.
a
And
spot.
that's what's so great, I think, about like the convertible note process, right?
Hmm.
And just knowing that earlier on, if you're talking to angel investors versus like VCs or any type of money, that they can be a little bit more flexible
Right.
with terms, and they know that they're betting on you as the founders. And like
Yeah.
we knew that. We would say that straight up is there are some people that invest in the business that didn't even have an opportunity to try it because
Oh, really?
we just let them know, look, like we're going to do everything we can to create products that people love.
Yeah.
And like, if people don't love it, then we'll continue to improve it till people love it. But here's the growing market. No one is, from a brand standpoint, no one is like doing exactly what we're doing. Like, obviously there are competitors, but like in terms of like the brand, we have this little gray area that we're attacking,
Sure.
and we're just gonna make it work.
Yeah.
And so
No, I
I
love
think
that.
that it was just, again, building pieces, and we needed money, going to get money. But yeah, I think that we still have that conversation: is how much do we want to raise, when do we want to raise it, and what are the pros and the cons.
Yeah. How did you guys decide on that initial amount? Because it sounds like early on, I mean, like there was a lot of manufacturing that was going to have to happen. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was hard to like, I've worked in smaller companies where like even just trying to figure out getting quotes and like what this could cost is kind of, I don't know, finding a needle in a haystack sometimes, and you're kind of
Yeah, I
guessing.
think
Do you remember like the original valuation? How you guys thought through that?
uh yeah, it was whatever we want it to be, and as much as the first investor would be willing to give us.
Fair.
so our lead investor was the first sales broker for a very large Greek yogurt company that is still a very large Greek yogurt company.
Okay.
And so he was a broker there, and did well, and had a lot of contacts. And again, I think this goes back to what I was talking about earlier: is we could get from 0 to 1, but getting from 1 to 2, even though Josh and I had all the confidence in the world that we could do it, we were going to do it, we needed a stamp of validation.
Right.
And what better to have that stamp of validation than to receive it with the check, and with someone that has the contacts, and someone that could really guide us in the beginning, help get us from 1 to 2. Because again, I think that that's where so many of these companies have so much trouble, because it could be the best product in the world. It could be the right time for the product. It could be a growing market, but they're just like, people just don't believe because they don't see a name of someone that has done it before. And for better or for
Sure.
worse, that's just, that's what we had seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that first money that came in, it really was, this is what I want. This is what I want. And honestly, that was probably like 6 months before Shark Tank. That was really our shark. Like, that conversation was Shark Tank over the phone or in person. Like, it was
Okay.
just like,
Yeah.
this is what I want. This is what I want. No, no, yes. Like, and then we just found a way to make it work. We shook hands, we moved forward. And that amount was to allow us to formulate the product, and a few more other things that we needed to get done that were going to cost us some money. And then when that was complete, it was just, how much do we need to get to the next step?
Yeah.
And I think early on, because that money raised is expensive, right?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Because regardless of how far along you are, just like the val at that point, unless you're, there are companies out there that are raising 50 million on a 250 val with just an idea,
Yeah.
which, all the power to you. You got to sell for a bill if you're doing that. But
Yeah.
But early on, I think there were a lot of moving pieces. I think our valuation changed 1, 2, 3 times in the first year and a half,
Okay.
just because it's so quick. Like, you get one big piece that significantly impacts the business in the early days.
Right. And then I mean, like, this is one that a listener asked me not too long ago. They were like, how do you early on, I mean, evaluating, especially if you're pre-revenue,
Mhm.
is tough because
Yep.
I mean, I'm assuming you're looking at the competitive market and trying to see what the size of that is and trying to figure out what your piece of that pie could be.
Mhm.
How much leverage did you feel like early on you guys had with early on investors on like the valuation? Is that something that's more founder led and you guys really put a stake in the ground on what you think the valuation would be? Or is that more of like your first investors that come in are like, nah, this is what you're going to be valued at? Like,
It's
how
a
does that
great
work?
question. That's a great question. I think that we didn't exercise. We have like what we call like our waterfall cap table, where we can change the valuation. We can see how much is raised, and then we can determine like everyone's dilution based on that
Okay.
and the investment amount.
Yeah.
So early on, I think we did that based on what the first investor was going to come in at, and then what we were confident we can raise on based on having that member as part of the team, right? Because again, in the early days, yes, you could look at like the TAM and the percent you would need to get to X, but in the early days, they're really, again, just kind of investing in you. And a lot of these angel investors, at least the ones that invested in Slate, understood that if they were going to come in extremely early, they weren't like the valuation like might not be what they wanted it to be, but they realized that they were getting a piece of something early that could be much larger.
Sure.
And so again, I think, asking who kind of ran that show, I think we always felt it was us, and we kind of still do. And we never want we would never want an investor to invest in the business if they aren't comfortable with the value of the business, right? The
Yeah,
valuation of the business. But at the same point, we can't accept that money if we're not, or it's just going to be in the back of our minds and it'll just pollute the entire relationship.
that's a great
So
point.
I again, like, even on Shark Tank, it was half of the conversation, which we could talk about that, but we were
Yeah.
in there for a lot longer. They aired a lot of the conversation that had to do with the valuation, unfortunately. And, we had some pieces there that we unfortunately weren't allowed to talk about in the show just because of how new they were. But it was, the focus of the conversation was on the valuation. And for us, we always try to focus on Slate, like everything about Slate, because that's what they're investing in. The valuation, we never want to be the focus of the conversation. And if it is, a lot of times, it doesn't end up being the right investor. That's usually the last piece of the puzzle.
Got it. Oh, that makes sense. I mean, because they're buying it. Usually, they're buying into something for a lot like longer term and a bigger
Exactly.
picture than just truly the value. And even in a story like RX, I'm assuming early on when Peter and Jared were out, just kicking it around the very beginning. I mean, to think that the valuation, if you had a serious conversation with people early on what a valuation could be and where it ended up, I mean, you're never going to be able to hit that perfectly, on the head.
Exactly. You can't, like, because you're valuing, like, what are you actually using to value the business? And I think this is why, Shark Tank, a lot of those deals are like, they're taking like 25 points of the business, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be extremely early to give up 25 points to an investor that isn't going to be working for you.
Yeah, that's always my takeaway whenever I watch that show is it
Yeah.
seems like you're giving up so much. And I mean, yes, you're probably giving up more because you're on TV and you're getting all this marketing and hopefully
Right.
that propels you. I mean, for you guys, we can jump into that.
Yeah.
You didn't get a deal on Shark Tank, but I would hope that even if for companies that go on and don't get deals, did you at least see like kind of a springboard of online sales or just traction in general from like the
Yeah. So,
visibility?
so anyone that watched our episode, we could safely say that it didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
Net, it ended up positively impacting the business. And I'd say, sales aside, because like that's short term, it's just having it be part of the story, right?
Yeah.
Is like, it's a couple of knuckleheads from the burbs of Boston that have an idea to give chocolate milk a clean slate and do this whole new chocolate milk. And then they launch on Kickstarter, and then it's Shark Tank, and then it's into stores, and then it's money raised. And it's just like adding team members, people like reputable people that have helped build businesses in the past. And for us, I think that's what's been most powerful, because the conversations that, investor conversations, we always want them to go well.
Sure.
But the partnerships that I think are just as important, if not more important, are the grocery store conversations, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
going to be launching with Publix in a few weeks here.
Oh,
And
congrats.
thanks, man. And I think that just being able to talk about Shark Tank and having that experience,
Yeah.
you always get like a little smile, like a little chuckle from the
Sure.
buyer. And whenever we can, like, we just want to like sell that story, because that's what a lot of people that are buying into, right? They're buying into the story, again, whether it's an investor, whether it's a grocery store, or anyone between, or a partner even. And so I think that's what was most effective. That's how it most positively impacted the business, is just having Shark Tank be a part of our story, and knowing that, having that stamp of validation that the people at Shark Tank thought that we had something unique enough to put us on the show.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, was there anything lesson learned from that? I mean, you kind of hit on at the beginning of just like, if someone's so focused on the valuation and that's the entire conversation, they're probably not the right investor for you guys. For anyone out there who's, way earlier stage than you guys, that's
Yeah.
maybe wants to raise money at some point. Do you have any advice for listeners who, are thinking about getting into the fundraising process and like maybe things that you learned or things that you would avoid if you did it over again? I think that'd be helpful for people listening.
Yeah. I think that I would really focus on how much money do you need. And obviously you want a buffer. Obviously things are going to come up, but just starting the conversation, having a first conversation when you don't need money, is the best time to have it, because
Ah, I
then
love that.
your back's not against the wall, right?
Yeah.
And so like even now, like we're always having conversations with potential investors just to kick off the conversation and just like keep it warm and just keep everyone updated. Because also you're able to then show your progress, right? And I
That's
think that's
smart.
huge. When you're thinking about someone investing in business, or you investing in a business, right? Like, even if you were to invest whatever, $500, $1,000, like any individual person, is what would you want to see from that business? If they started with an idea, and then it was, all right, they got an MVP, all right, they launched on Kickstarter, they did well, they have, X now people involved, like that progress. If you're able to see all of that, that's so much more powerful than just, hearing the story in like one line or like 2 or 3 quick minutes.
Yeah,
And I think that's also a lot of our investors have followed on, even ones that wrote small checks in the beginning, are now reinvesting because they've seen the progress and they're a part of it, and it's exciting to be a part of.
for sure. Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah,
And do you feel, and I'm sure this completely depends on, every angel investor, every VC, everyone you work with is going to be different.
Mhm.
How much do you guys like leverage, your investors for knowledge? Like that's another question I've been getting is like, it seems like a scary thing to like you getting money from people and then you're going back and asking them for all this advice. But I think more common than not, that's actually like, it's a great way to use investors. Like they want to see your growth just as much as you obviously want to impress them with with your results, right?
100%. Like there's stakes for them, right? And
Yeah.
we've had a lot of people that have wanted to become advisors first that help us out, and we have a handful of great advisors. And I think leveraging your investors is extremely important. I think that's why it's great to target people that have unique skill sets. Like
Okay.
for us, like we're very fortunate to have Doug and Justin from Halo Top as investors
Yeah.
to us. So like just giving us knowledge, and like Jake from Movement Watches, who like obviously has helped build an e-commerce business, and just people that have invested in the business, and we've been able to reach out to about, what do you think is best. And when we have an issue, we usually do what we say is like just blitz the investors and advisors, and Josh and I will just hit up everyone at once and then just
Yeah.
collect all the feedback and then make a decision. Because
Oh,
that's,
love that. That's great.
I
It's
mean,
like a
that's
pool of knowledge that you just
exactly
have.
right.
Yeah.
And so, there's some investors that we know are great people, but their money is their value. And then there are other investors, regardless of the size of the check, where their knowledge is their value and the investment is great. And being able to talk about them as investors, or just knowing that they have stakes, just makes them want to contribute even more.
Sure.
But no, I mean, I think, even people that don't know us, we just try to use as a sounding board. Like we always want to sponge in everything. Like we
Yeah.
always say, we want to be the stupidest people in the room.
Oh, I get it.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, this is something that I think more and more people are finding out. It's definitely with podcasts like this, and there's a ton of really good ones out there now in the CPG space. It seems like it's one of the few spaces where everyone wants to help each other. Like, there's really not too many. I mean, like, yeah, of course, like very competitive brands, maybe not, but like in general, the space I would argue is more apt to help each other, especially because there's just I always tell people as an analogy, I'm like, there's like on your phone, there's only, so many apps you might click on in a day. In the tech community, it's very different. You go to the grocery store, there's so many brands that you're
I know.
interacting with every time you go. There can be a lot more than one winner, which is I think is cool.
Definitely. And I think that, the way that we say it here is, between the numbers, it's like it's war, it's sport. Like if you're in the grocery store, like we're competing for shelf space.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then like when you walk out the store, like on the sidelines, or like when we're not playing, like when we're not in the game, like we're helping, we're shaking hands. Like it's like you just like look at all these professional athletes that are all friends, and then
Yeah.
they're on the court, they're between the numbers and they're competing.
Oh, that's
Like
so
that's
true.
kind
That's
of
a
how
great
we think
one.
about
Yeah.
it, because like we want to help everyone out. We're all part of this movement together. This startup, better for, like in a lot
Really
of
the better.
cases for
Yeah.
Slate, like better for you movement, right?
Yeah. Right.
Grocery stores, like our Expo, obviously a great example, but like grocery stores in 5 or 10 years are gonna be a lot different. It's gonna be a lot better for you
100%.
products, and um, being a part of the movement's exciting. We always try to help out other brands when we can.
Sure. Then that makes sense. So another thing I thought is interesting with you guys fit into this mold of, I like to ask this question when it seems right, is why do you think some of the bigger brands that play in the milk industry haven't tried to do something similar? I think it's an interesting way just to like reverse engineer and think through like the way
Yeah,
big corporations work.
it's funny. We it's the old "why doesn't Facebook just do it"
Yeah.
question that
Yeah.
everyone in the tech space asks everyone else. But they are so focused on upgrading their current SKUs, a lot of brands, right? And they are so focused on just trying to keep up that a lot of times it's very difficult to innovate, and there's a lot of risk involved. So why not let the smaller companies take those risks with the unique products, and if it does well, scoop them up.
Yeah.
Um, and also, we had one investor once tell us, who's going to be the guy at Coke or whatever that takes a shot on a product and fails? Like they are risking their career on that. And
They
again, I
really
don't know
are.
if that's true or not.
Yeah.
But we like hearing that, it was like, this is one individual person that is doing very well, and they're risking everything on something that is risky. Like all startups are risky.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I've worked in big corporate America too. So I can say on the other side, it's number one, yeah, that risk, and two,
Right.
there's not a big payoff. Like it's not
Exactly.
like if all of a sudden it's the next big thing. Oh, okay, cool. Well, you've been in this role for a few years and you move on to the next one. There's not this like incentive that there is outside of
Right.
that
And I
world.
think with startups too is you're building this culture, you're building this brand where everyone that joins the team is so focused on helping it grow because they want like it's the desire too. Like it's real. Like
Yeah.
especially at the store level. Like we just got in a market basket and our team today
Oh,
is like posting
congrats.
our
Some
Slack
big
channel. And
news today.
thanks, man. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's been a good couple weeks for us.
That's awesome.
Um and like our teams just posted like all of our area sales managers are just posting the Slack channel of all the placements they're getting and all the displays they're getting. It's crazy to see. It's desire, it's want,
Yeah.
it's real. And like you kind of hear about it like cliche wise, but no, like that desire of doing what it takes to get whether it's one more face and a dark chocolate or a case stack up to the moon of all three flavors like that's real and
Oh
that
yeah.
drives sales.
It is, and I think it's something that in the last year I feel like has kind of been talked about so much less just because of COVID. I mean, it sounds like you're in the weeds of it. I mean, for me at RX when I first joined in 2017, I mean that was like daily. It was like my email was just like, hey, we got into this door. Hey, we got this placement. I mean, it was just like you couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's kind of coming back? Are we kind of on the starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as retail and some of I guess that's really like secondary placement, some of this promotional stuff that we've been missing out on the last year?
I think it's coming. I think it's and again, that's why for us, we were in like 300, 400 stores like Q3 last year, and then now we're going to be in 3,000. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's and again, it's because of like we weren't getting meetings during COVID,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Right.
because none of these retailers were cutting a new product. They're selling milk and like traditional like bread.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but
But
it's
I
funny
think
too because there's a
good.
lot of brands that I mean, you guys are one of the few I would put into the category of when that happened, you put your pedal to the metal on ecom and online and you noticed it and you saw it a lot. Like I saw you guys everywhere.
Yeah,
Um, and then there's brands that I felt like were way behind and they didn't get it figured out to like the end of the summer.
yeah,
And then now that we're kind of on this whiplash on the other side, the brands that really made it on ecom and made a splash online, I think to be honest, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing in retail now. The buyers are the same people like me and you that are looking
yeah.
online at food and drinks, um, that are now wanting those brands back in the store. So it's kind of this wild life cycle that's happened.
100, and that's right when we realized this was happening. We realized we had to like COVID, like let's say like early April last year. We
Yeah.
realized that we weren't going to be able to get on the shelves, and so that's when we kind of took the gas off, or the took the we started putting the brakes on retail and focusing on e-commerce because we knew there was a huge opportunity that was about to come. Where
Yeah.
like people like my grandma were buying online,
Yeah.
like
Right. For like the first
that's
time
not
ever. And they're like, wait, this is really nice.
exactly. This is great. I get it to
Yeah.
my door. And
Yeah.
so that's why when we launched the business, story I didn't even go into is we went to local dairy farms around the area, around
Oh, did you
different
really?
towns. And we were just like, can we just make some of this stuff and just like start like handing it out? Like just anything. Cause again, there's 16 months from
Yeah.
the idea. And so there was like a 6 to 8 month period there in probably late 2018 where we're like, maybe we should kind of make this stuff.
Okay.
Right. Um, and then we're like at a certain point, like we were literally at these dairy farms, like where they were just producing milk and like selling it to schools.
Oh, wow.
And I think one day we just looked at each other, what the hell are we doing? Like, like let's be patient here. Let's be
Yeah.
patient.
Sure.
And then again, like, had we launched that, which I don't think we actually would have, COVID would have crushed us. Like we knew we had to be shelf stable. Like we knew that in our guts. And I think, one of the things that Josh and I always talk about is we go with our gut. We always follow data, look at the data, whatever. But going with our gut is basically just like our instincts, analyzing all the info we've ever seen, and then just telling us what to do. And I think
Oh,
that
that's smart.
we've had like two major, I wouldn't say major. I mean, we've had plenty of mistakes, but the two mistakes that we always go back to and we still talk about, not during weekdays, but like if we like sometimes we'll jokingly bring it up, are the mistakes where we went against our gut and we were still wrong.
Oh,
Because
okay.
because if you go with your gut and you're wrong, you're like, all right, at least I went with what I really thought was best and my body told me so. But if you go against your gut and you're wrong, like you idiot, Manny, like you idiot, Josh, like you guys knew, like you can't sleep because you're like,
Yeah.
I knew this was wrong.
Well, so explain to everyone why you did it then. Why'd you do it twice? If you,
Uh,
because that's
I,
a great, I mean, that's a great piece right there. Just like,
I think the first time was, we'll call it Hollywood, the Hollywood effect.
okay.
Was we got sold and we got a little starstruck, and because we thought it was what's best for the business, and we're like, yeah, just there's something about it where we're not totally sure, but we thought it was being uncomfortable versus going against our gut, because you're always out of your comfort zone.
Sure. Oh
Like
yeah, always.
you gotta step outside your comfort zone when you're doing something new, right? To achieve something new, you gotta be uncomfortable. And we thought it was like a little bit of discomfort versus going against our gut. And the second time, I think it was the same thing. And this, the first one was a little like none were severe, none like impacted the business significantly. But we're like, dude, we just gotta take a second next time. Like again, things are moving so quickly, and we always talk about just analyzing everything, and then we
Right.
make a decision, and we say NLB, never look back, just go.
Love it.
And if
Love
it's
it.
wrong, like you're not, it's like kind of like connect the dots. You're not
Yeah.
like erasing that line, you're just jumping into a new dot, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, the second time we were like, what, just think, just stop for a second, take a deep breath, and just like listen to like what your body is telling you.
Love it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, I think especially in like the startup world, there's so many. I mean, even at RX, when it was like even like right as you're going through the acquisition, and then even after, there's been so many, and I'm sure everyone deals with this, so many things where it's like, yeah, you're just kind of taking a risk, and you're to your point. I like that a lot. Like if you go with your gut, at least you're still 50-50 chance of being wrong. But if you go with your gut, I mean, I think you'll remember that lesson too of just like, this is why I thought it was a good idea, even if it
Right.
wasn't. We went for it. But there's also something about failing fast too, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you guys are probably in the thick of this too, but it's like so many of the big brands, they take so long to test decisions that by the time they test it, and if it's a failure, they've wasted so much time and resources where a lot of smaller companies have the ability to test and fail quick and iterate and keep moving.
I know. It's great. Like we always go back to the two, because the whole why can't Facebook do it? We call it like,
Yeah.
why can't big company X do it? Like we have the conversation all the time. We have one investor that says that if anyone ever asks you that question as an investor, hang up immediately. They're not right to be an investor, which we don't do
Oh,
that.
love
We're not
it.
that
You
extreme.
should have hung out
But
with me.
no. But no, we always there are cases of large companies that have tried startups that have been unsuccessful. Like I think it was Pepsi and Quaker came out with or Mueller. It was Pepsi and Mueller came out with a Mueller Flip. That was like a
Mhm.
competitor to Chobani back in the day. Like what they did in sales, if we were doing in sales, if either of us were doing in sales, we'd be doing all right. Let's just put it
Yeah,
that way.
sure.
But they just couldn't keep up, and they ended up shutting it down very quickly. The same thing, Quaker just came out with an oat milk not too long ago. Obviously, oat milk's hot right now.
Yeah.
It's oat milk. Like it's not too difficult to make, but it was in the market for 3 months. They shut it down. They just couldn't get to where they needed to get to quickly enough.
Because for
And
them, it's
so
all about shareholder return, you know?
exactly,
Right. They
exactly,
don't have time to wait to see if it'll work. It's got to work right off the bat,
exactly.
which is so interesting when you think about it, right? And it's funny when you walk in the store now and you're starting to see down every aisle brands like you guys. I think the cereal aisle is really interesting. Obviously, we're owned by Kellogg, so
Yep.
it's you're starting to see brands pop up that are taking a spin on that. Like there's lots of that happening on down lots of different aisles now.
Yeah, and I think that we see a lot of, at least what we talk about, is we see a lot of the same things with the brands that are starting to make it or win when it comes
Hmm.
to startups. We see familiarity, nostalgia, and better for you. Like those are kind of like the
Oh, I
three
love it. Yeah, you
that
guys
they
hit that
talk.
on the head.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that that's also why again, it's not something we set out to create. We're not like, we didn't say those like buzzwords or whatever, but you look at like lattes, like canned
Yeah.
lattes. They're better for you canned lattes or bottled latte companies that are doing great. You look at cereal, right? You
Yeah.
look at like lemonade or sparkling or soda, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're thinking of a lot of the same brands here, and it's taking something that people know that's familiar to them, and it's making it better for you and taste just as good, if not
Right.
better. And then at that point, the consumer is willing to pay the extra 50 cents, a dollar for it, because it's better for their bodies.
100%. It's like
And
this
those,
whole it's like paradigm shift of like what things should cost at the store.
yep.
I know I just had the founder of it's called Luna Bay Booch. It's like I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's like it's probiotics and there's other like really good ingredients in it's like spiked kombucha.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where like in mid conversation I had heard of this brand, it's like a friend of my wife's, and I was like, it's so strange because that's like the one aisle or maybe just the one part of the store that like I've gotten so used to, through college and everything else is like you're drinking shitty beer and you don't think anything of it. And now I'm starting to see brands even in that space that are
Oh
starting
yeah.
to bring like better for you, and they cost a lot more. And at first you're like sticker shock. You're like, holy shit, 4 cans for $15 at Whole Foods. Like what's in this? But then you're like, well, hold on, I do this with every other part of my day. I don't know. It's very interesting. It's all starting to transition.
Yeah, and I think also the reason why a lot of these brands are having success is because I think people more and more are integrating products into their routine more, especially now with COVID, like when people are working remotely. I personally eat and drink the same thing at the same time every day. Like it's just easy for
Same.
me.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
it just is. It's just one less thing to worry about.
it's just, you don't have to think about it. Right. And so if I can replace, my bag of chips with something like a better for you bag of chips, and it still tastes like I'm still getting the satisfaction I need, like why wouldn't I do that? Like,
sure.
Why not pay an extra 50 cents per bag?
Right.
And I think that's what we're starting to see is especially now with COVID is people just replacing like staples in their routine with better for you staples. And that's why, you're still going to have whether it's your weekend or whatever, like your cheat days or cheat meals.
Yeah.
And I don't think that those are ones that at least I am seeing a lot of better for you brands really penetrate. It's like the cheat meal. It's more just these routines, right? Like we always talk about, we want to be a part of the everyday routine. Like we want to be a part of the day that you're exercising, whether that's as your breakfast, as your 3 p.m. or as your post-workout. Like that's like, those are our 3 drinking moments.
Yeah.
And so we'd rather have, 100 people drink us 4 times a week than 1,000 people drink us once.
Love it. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. It's just kind of like, the repetitive purchaser. You want to like keep that person that's trying it all the time. Yeah, totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. You kind of hit on e-commerce. That was another avenue I was curious of. But would love to know, just to kind of expand on as I know we're getting to the end of our time, is what did the year of COVID 2020, what did you guys learn from an e-commerce lens? Just like what have been the impacts of your business, and how do you guys think you're going to take e-commerce moving forward now that you're trying to get into retail as well?
Yeah, I think our goal is to have about 80% of our sales be retail. Like that's our long-term goal.
Yeah.
We think about e-commerce as a great channel, but in all, eventually, if it isn't yet, it'll be marketing through sales, right? Like when we are advertising typically on Facebook and Instagram, which is where we do a lot, we're starting to get in podcasts a little bit. We do some Google, but we're really thinking about that as like a mobile billboard that is trying to drive people to sell. But even if they don't buy, or they're trying to drive people to buy, but even if they don't buy, then they go into a store and they're familiar with the product.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're using e-commerce to really build the brand. And so as we grow, and that's why, COVID silver lining here is, at least for the Slate business, is that like it allowed us to build the brand, drive sales as we kind of got our retail affairs in order.
Yeah.
So now our brand, because we, I don't know how many stores we would have been in, but we would have been in more than 300. And then now we've had a whole year of just all over social media, whether it's influencers, whether that's athletes, whether like, because we do a lot with influencers and athletes, and then obviously just paid ads. Now so many more people have seen the product, so just the conversion rate in store, we just expect to be significantly higher.
Yeah, which I mean totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And are you guys, obviously, like chocolate milk has been the whole point of, the beginning of this, and you don't have to share anything you don't want to, but as I think about you getting into retail, obviously the next thing they'll push for is innovation and other things, or at least flavor extensions. I'm sure there's tons in the pipeline, but is there anything you want to share that's like something on the horizon that people should look forward to from Slate?
So I think we had a strong first year. We were very fortunate. A lot of buyers took a chance on us, and again, it's just our team, boots on the ground. It's been unbelievable building the brand online. I think that what's important is, especially early on, first 2 years for any business, constantly improving the product. Like even RX, you think about the repackage, right?
Yeah.
I think we've told that story to investors even. So
I mean, it is. It's crazy how something so simple can be so impactful.
But like even Doug from Halo Top even always talks about like improving on the early products. We have some of the team members of Yasso Greek frozen yogurt on our team.
Nice.
They started with a much different product and then they started taking off when they changed the product. So I think I would expect to see some changes to our current products, some enhancements, we'll call them, within the next couple months. Right now, all of our SKUs have 9 grams of added sugar, still 75% less than chocolate milks, have 17 grams of protein, 130 cal. We think that we can make them more flavorful and better nutritional makeup. And I think that finding that balance of like flavor, sweetness, and nutritional is something we're always going to be improving.
Oh yeah.
So we spent the last year doing that, and so excited to release some of that innovation in the coming months. I think the obvious next innovation also is new flavors.
Okay. Yeah.
Which man, to get a shelf stable, ultra filtered chocolate milk or flavored milk to market takes time.
Yeah, right. We've talked about it. So it makes so much sense now for anyone listening. I mean, I'm sure that's like me. Like there's a lot of light bulbs going off as you were explaining that process.
Yep. So we have some of those that we're hoping to release sometime later this year. And then I think that there's also an opportunity to just help give all of milk a clean slate. I think that that's, what
Love
we've
that.
kind of uncovered is that, that it's been a great start, but I think that there's a larger opportunity that we're starting to think about. How can, because milk, again, it's just milk itself, like chocolate milk aside, it's often thought of as, this high sugar kids drink,
Yeah, it really is.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, that's chocolate milk, and the milk itself is just like a drink for kids. So, as we think about the future, like we are an athleisure brand, right? Like we kind of have a fitness angle to us, because of the high protein. We're just thinking of how can we help reposition olive milk. And so just starting to have those conversations, and, we call them blue sky conversations, typically, Friday nights, Sunday nights.
Yeah.
But I think when you're starting any business, you got to think short term and long term, mostly short term, but then just know what you're working towards. And I think in the next year or so, I would expect better products or enhanced products and more flavors.
Love it. Man, those are sweet. Those are great. It gets me excited. I actually haven't tried it yet, but I'm gonna get some after this and try it out.
Oh
I'm
yeah, I'll
excited
send you
to try
some.
it.
Send me your address.
I would love to. I'd love to try some. You've answered a lot of the questions. So fun. Like I told you at the beginning before we recorded, I always have questions. You kind of like just started pinging them off. The few that I have to ask, I always ask founders these.
Yeah.
You seem like a guy that'd be into something like this. I always lead with book, but if you're not a reader, it could be a podcast, just source of knowledge for all the listeners. What is your most suggested or shared book, podcast, source of knowledge?
I will listen to every founder story I can.
Okay.
So whether it's how I built this, whether it's VMG has a podcast called Unfinished Biz,
Love it.
just listening to founder stories, because you can hear about, like, again, you're not going to hear everything, but you start to hear a lot of the same problems, and there are a lot of similarities along the way. So, as if you are to go on to try to start a company, or you are, I would listen to as many stories as you can, and we try to talk to as many founders as we can too, because I
Yeah.
think that's just the best way to learn.
Love it. Yeah, just getting into the weeds with everyone else that's trying to do the same thing. That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's smart. Um, this one, I think it's interesting to hear this from any founder, but obviously running a business, there's just got to be a million different things that you're trying to manage day in and day out. What is your go-to as far as tools go for, goal planning, daily tasks? Is it pen and paper, or is it apps? Like, what do you use to just plan your day and get shit done?
So it's a lot of Josh and I just calling each other, being like, "What the hell we got to do today?"
I know
But
that is.
yeah, so we we have a lot of Google Sheets. Still, we try to be as scrappy as possible.
Big fan.
Right?
Yeah.
We are big on Slack.
Love it.
We honestly, we do the whole unread email thing.
Okay.
So, and we, again, Josh and I are
What
co-founders.
does that mean? What is
So
unread email?
basically, like, we'll leave an email unread until it's responded to by either me or Josh, or like who's supposed to respond to it.
Okay.
So it's just like a constant cleaning out of the inbox. That's a
That's
lot of
something I
time.
do. I never realized that was a thing. I do that same thing, but I didn't
Exactly.
know.
That's what
Yeah.
I think that it just kind of works for us.
Okay. Yeah.
And like if there's an email, like Josh and I, one of us is going to respond, because a lot of the times we communicate with the same people. We'll just like text each other. Like we're just texting all day. Like on our
Okay.
computer.
Which that's probably the easiest, honestly.
It's like, again, we're not trying to, like, we're pretty simple about what we do. It's like we don't have any ridiculous softwares. Like we do have organization, like our teams use Trello, like our e-com
Okay.
team uses Trello. Our grocery team uses Repsly. So it's like we have all of these tools, but when it comes to myself and my co-founder Josh just delegating, working together, it's text, it's Slack, and it's email. And it's just, again, it's just like getting shit done. Just
Yeah.
knowing what has to get done, just constantly communicating. And I think not being at an office has its pros and cons, but I think that's probably the toughest part. It's just like those one-off messages, just they add up, like the time it takes.
Right. Instead of turning around and asking a question,
Right.
now it's some sort of communication, right?
Right.
That's one question I would love to ask you before we finish up is how did you two decide you were going to be good? And maybe that's you don't know until you're in the weeds, but I think that's something that's always hard to figure out is how do the two people that start something know that they're like, okay, we're going to do well together? Or has it been something you guys just kind of figured out over time?
Yeah. I mean, it starts with trust. Like the amount of stories of founder split, like whatever it is, it always started with trust. And like when Josh and I, we met in the tech world before this,
Okay.
before Slate, and like there was just like a mutual level of trust. Or like I could tell Josh, like business wise, personal wise, like it doesn't matter. Like I could tell him anything, no one would ever find out. If he says he's gonna get something done, I know it's getting done. Like there's no need to follow up. Like
Oh, that's
sometimes I will
great.
just like give him a hard time. and like same with him goes to me. But like it's just this mutual level of trust and just again the desire to build something. And it didn't even start with chocolate milk. I think we just kind of both felt like the other one had this like desire to build something sweet,
Okay.
and it's just happened with chocolate milk, but it's just like the want to just like build the next big thing.
Yeah.
And then as we started, I think it was clear that we just kind of like yin and yang very well.
Okay.
Um, when it comes to, honestly to most aspects of the business. And I do think that if there's ever anything that both of us don't know, I know Josh will be able to figure it out. Like no matter what it is. Like
Oh,
I
that's
do
great.
not trust Josh to design anything for the life of me, but like marketing wise, but if he had to, like I know he would work and work and work and just get it done. And the same thing, like if when it comes to finance stuff, like if I had to get something done, he knows I would just Google the shit out of it and then just figure it out and get it done and move on and just do it the best I could. And I think that's early on we had that mutual level of trust and respect for one another.
Okay.
And then it just kind of we just kind of morphed into what we need to morph into. And there's a lot we still do together. Like
Yeah.
just because I think that us working together creates the most powerful solution to a lot of the problems.
No, that's really cool. I mean, that's a great way to put it. And it sounds like you guys are both hustlers. So it sounds like you
Yeah.
just get stuff done and figure it out. And that's probably the key to a lot of the problems, right? So
Well, I mean,
solving them. Yeah.
it's making decisions. It's not standing idly. It's almost like this like big maze. Like you're in a helicopter, you're looking at like a grass field maze, a
Yeah.
million different paths to get to the center, whatever the center is, and you take the wrong turn, you go miles the wrong direction, you hit a wall, you're like shit, you just take another turn. It's
Right.
just like I think
You
that's
just
the
don't stop.
mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. No, that's great. Last question and the most important. How can people follow along with your journey and how can people follow Slate and try Slate?
Yeah. So we sell nationwide online, slatemilk.com, SLATEMILK.com. We're on Instagram at Slate Milk, and you can sign up for our email subscriber list. It's usually where we give the best discounts, which I know people love.
Love that.
But yeah, I mean, we're always updating people on our Instagram, always on our emails, and you know, it's we've been very fortunate to have a lot of awesome people get involved, and we're run by our team. Like whether it's investor advisors, but now it's really the employees that are just busting ass every single day, and
Yeah.
it's it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. Well, I will add all those to the show notes so you guys can check all that out. And Manny, thank you so much. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast today. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. And I'll talk soon. Stay in touch.
All right, see ya.
Awesome. See ya.